Well, I pulled the stream back half an hour because my missus is coming up the road, so I want to be able to go and pick her up on time. Scots Armour said that would be fine, so it was agreed for 25 to 7, and I sat and I waited. I don't know where he is. I'm assuming he's just late. Not really prepared for a soul stream, in all honesty. But I think I'm going to have to go for it. But he's just messaged me to say he'll be on soon. So there you go. Crisis averted. So I'll just message him back and we will begin with proceedings, shall we say. There she is. Aye, there she is. I'll see you soon, lass. See, I'm going solo for now, but it's fine. So, obviously, this was meant to be initially a part 2 to the stream that we did the other day, me and Scots Armour, and it was quite a lot to take in, quite a lot to actually sort of dissect, and we had Scott Webb on as well, and it sort of went, no offence to the guy, we were all at fault, but it went off topic. And one thing I do not like on streams is when things go off topic. So we were initially going to do a part 2 to that to sort of go over the remnants of what we didn't really discuss. Good evening, Budgie Burger. Nice to see you. But then something else came out just in the recent days from the Scottish government, which I think is just deserves a sort of stream in and of itself. So I'll get to that when Scots Armour joins. His broadband was pissing about, so I'm just sort of rambling on ever so slightly until he joins me backstage, and then we will begin with proceedings. Jojo Gizmo, nice to see you. Tricky Woo, nice to see you. But yeah, I might as well share the screen. My new favourite feature on StreamYard. Now I know how to do it properly. Show you what this stream is going to be about for anybody that's not actually aware. Well, the title of the video might have given it away to a certain extent, yeah. But, so this is it here. So this is what we're dealing with now. Scottish government, of course. And it says anti-racism in Scotland. That would be nice if I didn't do that. Fucking progress review. Yeah, 2023. The race equality framework and the immediate priorities plan. There's never a dull moment in Scotland. Never a dull moment in Scotland, as far as the Scottish government are concerned. But one of the most egregious things you really could say about this is the fact that this is more or less taxpayer funded, So this isn't just something that should piss off Scottish people. This should just piss off British people in and of themselves because, we're all paying for this nonsense. And I pose the question quite a lot these days. Who votes for this stuff? Who voted for this stuff? And see, when you see some of the stuff that's contained within this documentation, you're just left. I hate this word, by the way, but flabbergasted. Yeah, he is, Toffee. He fucking is letting the team down here. His broadband was down, so I let him off. But I just, I've been kind of taken aback here, haven't I? Kickstart a stream by myself. Something I'm not opposed to doing. I've done that 1,000 times before. And Lord only knows I can talk for Scotland. But, I wasn't prepared for this. So I was in the door for work 2 minutes in, and then the stream's supposed to start. So it is what it is. Parker, nice to see you, bud. I apologize for you probably clicked this video wondering what's Scots Armour and Resist Alliance going to be talking about, and here I am talking to myself like a dick. I'm just waiting on him. Anti-white agenda. Well, more correctly, more anti-Scottish agenda. Because this isn't directed at Polish people, or whatever. So this is explicitly anti-Scottish. But yeah, Scots Armour is taking a sweet time, I will be honest. But hurry up. Jesus Christ. But yeah, so this came out funnily enough, just like 2 or 3 days ago, on the Scottish Government's website, and I love how they just sneak in things like this. You know, you don't hear this being talked about in the news. You don't hear opposition parties speaking about this or pulling them up for any of the nonsense that's contained within documents like this. No, it just seems to sort of fly under the radar while everybody's distracted with Nicola Sturgeon or, you know, independence, etc. It's almost as if, now hear me out here, there's an aspect of theatre at play when it comes to politics, because you are presented via the media and politicians alike with what they want you to be presented with. And all too often, things such as this, as well as consultations and whatnot, sneak in the back door. That allows for consultations to be filled in purely by the activist types and the people that want to push for X, Y, and Z to be implemented at a later date. And as far as stuff like this is concerned, it seems to be snuck under the radar and pushed through, and people are none the wiser, because if they were, it might very well lead to a bit of hoo-ha, for lack of a better term. But what's this? The Polish are useful at the moment, but the end game's anti-white. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I don't disagree with that. But they've also, in a lot of these anti-racist documents, when they're talking about the oppression and whatnot, they do have a category explicitly for European minorities, like Polish and whatnot. So it's Scottish in this context. I don't know where Scots Armour is, to be honest. So I might have to sort of go through this a bit by myself, which I wasn't wanting to do, admittedly. But if he comes on, he comes on. I kind of have to go through this anyway, because I've wasted 7 minutes now. So anyway, well, yeah, no, they're included within. As it's like, honestly, there's some of these documents. They say that like well, they don't explicitly say Polish, but European immigrants, but they're a separate. They experience a separate type of oppression and racism because it takes less time for them to integrate. So obviously, the sort of underlying implication is that because they're white, you know, they blend in more, but they're still victims of racism and whatnot. It's the usual shit. So, yeah, let's get to this, shall we? Let me zoom in a bit here. This is annoying now because I have to keep it at my StreamYard and see if Scots Armour appears. It'd be nice if you did. Like, I don't want to do this by myself. Fucking hell. Well, anyway, so as I said, it's come out in just the last few days, and there is so much shit in here. Like, this is instantaneously, you've got a list of acronyms coming up, and some of them are doozies. They've got their goals here, right? So even their goals straight away. Who voted for this, by the way? Goal 1, an accountable approach to support and drive forward the implementation of the race equality framework to be established. Goal 2, strategic work with Scotland's public sector to better address race equality, including through more effective practice linked to the Scottish specific public sector equality duties. Goal 3 is Scotland's public sector has improved capacity to tackle racial inequality, which they define as something that's just not applicable definition wise. You know, inequality, equality, equity, you know, they get the words mixed up purposely. And meet the needs of minority ethnic people, because that's what it's all about in Scotland. We need to meet the needs of minority ethnic people. Goal 4 is policy processes in Scotland, which are based on a robust range of data on ethnicity. We've got Scotland's minority ethnic voluntary sector is stronger, more effective, and sustainable. Oh, I've gone too far. Yeah, and I've done that again. I'm off to a great start here. Off to a fantastic start. They want greater cohesion between all of Scotland's communities, or communities in Scotland, I should say. They got a funny way of showing that, though. I love this one, Goal 9. Police Scotland's workforce better reflects the diversity of its communities. This trope that they ran along with, and they've been doing this for so long. They act as if this is carte blanche. This has to be implemented. There is no written rule. There is no rule that goes without saying that institutions should, quote unquote, reflect the diversity of communities. It is simply another method to brown and black institutions in Scotland. And play this out to its logical conclusion, right? So a community, quote unquote community, right, might be 10%, 15% BAME, right? And I'm not even using the proportionate representation argument for this. I'm just saying in general. So because our community is 15% roughly BAME, institutions within the area or the country in general must reflect that diversity and be slightly BAME. So I pose the question then, as the country becomes more and more BAME, does that mean that institutions must become more and more BAME to accurately reflect the diversity of the community or the nation at large? What happens then when the country is 90% BAME? Does that mean that institutions have to follow suit, or will there always be a place for white people within these institutions? No, of course not. That's a rhetorical question. It's just nothing more than sugar-coated namby-pamby queer words in order to masquerade the true malevolent intentions of browning our institutions, obtaining power via the back door. Scotland's police workforce is better able to tackle racism and promote equality. Yeah. Okay. Jesus. Increased participation and representation of minority ethnic individuals in governance and influence and decision making at local and national level. Oh, I love this. So again, we'll get to this obviously. Well, I'd like to say we'll get to this, but I've got to send the link to Scots Armour. He's coming, or is he in the backstage already? I fucking did send this to him. He's been a boomer. Oh, sorry, folks. Let me do this. There you go. But yeah, this goal here. Where am I? Where it says increased participation and representation of minority ethnic individuals in governance and influence and decision making. Power. Because they're not going to want a BAME in a government or influential position who doesn't adhere to this ideology, these ideologies, which are predicated on critical race theory and anti-whiteism. No. They need BAMEs in there who profess that ideology. So it's a specific type of BAME that they're looking for, but more in particular, this is again, what did I just say about power? There's it again, power. There's Scots Armour. Good evening, sir.
You know, when you talk about power, I just think of Sturgeon and Maggie Chapman with a sword in the middle of a house shouting, "I have the power." But you know something? This is going to be a good one, folks, because there was some absolute filth within that article, to say the least.
Aye.
Thanks for having us, mate.
Oh, it's about fucking time, eh? Leave me in the lurch there, like, yeah.
Unfortunately, just for the folk that think I'm a bit of a twat with times, my broadband had issues and I've been trying to put it up the last while, so apologies for those who came to see a second voice. Probably none, but apologies nonetheless.
A sword strapped to their nether region. Well, you've encouraged Clive now to start being grotesque. I hope you're happy with yourself. Right, Clive's an upstanding man, and look at him now. He's divulging in your shit in the chat.
Clive gets it.
And so does Toffee.
You know, on the three of them, Clive, Toffee, and PBC, I have to say, mate, I stand firmly with the egg in a cup crew. You're just a bigoted Highlander as far as I'm concerned.
I'm a bigoted Highlander. Do you know what? I am a bigoted. I wasn't a bigoted Highlander until I read this document, but you can keep your Irish imports to yourself. Like, it's so obvious that you're from Glasgow, eh? When you're consuming Irish cups of egg, eh? So don't hand me a piss, eh? What do you? Aye. What do you think of this, though? Eh? Like, I was on about power there, right? But I mean, I'm not even like going through like the contents of the document. I'm just simply going through like how they're breaking down the document. But look at this: increased participation and representation of minority ethnic individuals in governance and influence in decision making. Why?
Well, the thing is, ultimately, this was what these points that I was going to break down. And we're told that people have the right to look at manifestos, look at the candidates themselves in this country, and then have a vote to determine who you want to be in that position that you're voting for, right? But now the Scottish Government has pretty much, I would say, ramped up since the Humza chat in Holyrood going, not a woman of colour, our shame. And now we're being told, that you've got to vote for these people so that they can influence decision making at the levels that's obviously it's set out for. And when these people get into positions of power and influence, they start coming up with this agitation, language. And I think No Chance done a great clip with the chap at the conference. Was it last week, the week before? It's the fact that these people come over here, they expect, they get, and then they want to dictate. This should send alarm bells to people. It should be a line of caution, because if this is what they're saying now, it's to increase a minority participation. In 10 to 15 years' time, that's not going to be an increased minority, that's going to be the majority, and you're not going to be able to reverse that in the political channels.
No, exactly. No, very well said. That's why I very often refer to it as a sort of power grab. They're after power. Like, there's no other way to describe what these people are up to other than that. It is malevolence on steroids, for lack of a better term. They are attempting to wield their way into power, shoehorn themselves into positions so they, in turn, can then get more of their own in. I mean, it's textbook definition of colonization, if you ask me, like, just a lot more malevolent in nature. But even the Sustainable Development Goals, which I've spoken about on many occasions, I just want to bring this up quickly. Share this tab instead. I'm getting good at this, right? My favorite goal, Sustainable Development Goal 10. What does it say here in 10.2? It says, by 2030, empower and promote the social, economic, and political inclusion of all, irrespective of age, sex, disability, race, ethnicity, origin, religion, or economic or other status. That sounds awfully like what they're trying to do as far as the BAMEs are concerned. Because in Scotland, as it stands, we've already entered a position now where foreign nationals can stand for election, foreign nationals can vote, refugees can vote, refugees can stand for election. They're now currently pushing a consultation through Parliament, through the public sphere at the moment, to allow asylum seekers to stand for election and or vote as well, 16-year-olds. So I pose two sort of hypotheticals in that respect. The first one being that, our national identity is something I've said on many occasions before. Our national identity has been chipped away at because they are making you indistinguishable with the foreigner, which is what got me banned off fucking BitChute for saying as much. But my other point of contention, my other hypothetical would really be, what happens when there's too many of them in positions of power, right? And any hypothetical nationalist party or whatever came into power or was trying to come into power, it's never going to work. If you've got all these foreign nationals being able to vote in our country, right, and you've got all these refugees having a vote in our country, as well as having refugees and foreign nationals and BAMEs, etc., in abundance who've been shoehorned in positions of power to block such things, is it even possible for a sort of nationalist movement to even take off in this country? It sounds to me as if not only are they trying to obtain power, they're fucking ensuring that we don't regain it.
I would fully agree with that. The whole blueprint of this Agenda 30 on the West is to deconstruct, obviously, I suppose by large part, it's a system that we have helped grow because by methods applied through the various channels, it's been quite devious to not think that these levers, the political system, the academia world, would be reversed onto obviously guilt shaming and being used to actually target our own children and put us into the position that we're in now. But this is simply just a deconstruct so that they can come in, reboot, and obviously overload the system so that positions will be held by the minority looking after the minority classes themselves. But this isn't anything new. We've seen this being gradually building up for the last few years. But by large part, what I would play a part of caution is the point that you previously highlighted, that before a ball is kicked with what spectrums of people that they want to kind of include within that. The very first word is age. And if anyone's been paying attention in any part of Western society, what they're doing to children in schools right now, and this is something as well that we spoke about in our last stream. You know, you've got the youth parliament, and then you've got the children's parliament. It's this is gearing up to be an absolute messy predicament, not only socially but within the family units themselves. It's going to collapse like a house of cards, because it won't be like a tight knitted group pulling together. This is going to break at the seams, because it'll be an egotistical power trap, because everyone will have this false sense of entitlement and empowerment through the sheer propaganda that they've been diluting down to the most impressionable minds within society. And exactly as you said there, that within these minority positions and probably minority religious schools, they aren't going to have such a divisive framework within their own kind, respectively saying. I think that they're obviously going to continue to be somewhat traditional and strong with themselves, while we just become obviously eroded and weak, and that's not going to help us any course of longevity whatsoever.
No. Just on your point there as well about children, the latest update for the political or the politicization of children, shall we say, as well as their forever interference, or they're forever interfering in the lives of children. Just think name, person scheme, and whatnot from many moons ago. That's still actually a thing, by the way. It's just been redefined. But the UNCRC, a big part of it is politicizing children, enshrining in law politicizing children while simultaneously giving them the illusion that they're no different to an adult, amongst other egregious propositions. But their UNCRC, the United Nations Children's Rights Charter, the SNP initially, and the whole of the Scottish Parliament were unanimous in their vote for this back in 2021, but it was prevented from by the Supreme Court due to sort of complications, or as it says there, they later ruled it was out with the Parliament's legislative competence due to the Supreme Court. However, right, so amendments are now in the process of being made. And they will deliver a clear, coherent, and workable bill that will provide some viable protections for the rights of children in Scotland. And this is coming out. This was just the 27th of June. We're on the 29th now. The bill requires all Scotland's public authorities to take proactive steps to protect children's rights, and gives children, young people, and their representatives a new ability to use the courts to enforce their rights, amongst other things. I love how they only just bring that aspect of it up. There's a lot more to it.
See, on this though, right? On this, and it's good that you've kind of highlighted this part, right? Because this is giving children, young people, their representatives, an ability to use the court to enforce their rights. Okay, so the young chap that was up in the Highlands, when he had the confrontation with his teacher, saying that there is only two genders, his rights, his beliefs, scientific fact, and that boy, over a long case of time, was expelled. This isn't to express or have people stand on, you know, their ethnic sovereignty as a Scot, or their traditional family values, or their Christian faith, or whatever it may be. This is by a large part, you know, packaged as such, but in reality, it's going to be with the state's programme. You will be empowered if you toe the line within the state's programme. If you do not, you know, comply with the state's programme, then you will be branded a problem child, a young person at risk, a vulnerable family, a vulnerable setting, a vulnerable environment, and then that's going to give this bill arms and legs to basically go in and whip people away left, right, and centre. They will not admit to it as much, but this is exactly what this entails.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it is more or less the name person scheme 2.0, because it's going to give children the ability to, like, the right. Well, I mean, we've gone through some of them. They have a right to a clean and healthy environment, which, when you read between the lines there, that's climate change education. They have a right to be listened to and taken seriously, and that's not just applicable at political level or school level. That's from parents as well, right? Then when you look at how they are redefining abuse in Scotland, it's simple things about making children upset and whatnot, right? And their rights now, they're going to have rights enshrined in law. This is leading, and it might sound like hyperbole in many respects, but this is leading down a very slippery slope to the point where If a child is learning something in school, and you know damn well they will be learning very progressive things in school, and their parents take issue with that, that's going to lead to trouble. It's going to lead to trouble. You know? But they dress it up with shit about courts and whatnot, and quite often the excuse they use, or the example they use, is children care, right? They'll have rights. Well, make a separate bill for children and care then. And why does a bill that encompasses children and care encompass a multitude of very questionable political aspects to it? If it's got the United Nations rubber stamp on it, then you know it's bad news anyway. But on that note, I think I should get back to this. So this is Emma Roddick, right? Who I used to find quite hilarious in the Scottish Parliament because she's a feminist, of course. She's a loud and proud feminist, but she used to talk about how she was part of the LGBT community as well as the disabled community. Then it transpires she's bisexual and she's got a personality disorder. Oh yeah, like you really do fit in with all the Down syndromes, don't you? Like you're not exactly disabled, are you? You've got a personality disorder. And as for the LGBT community, I mean bisexuality. I mean, come on now. But anyway, she's now she's front and center of this document where she says that Scotland's got a world-renowned reputation for providing a warm and open welcome to those who come to visit or make it their home. Our diversity is something to be celebrated. The usual shit, right? I'm not going to get bogged down on that sort of nonsense. However, right off the bat, they say here that since 2016, we published our race equality framework for Scotland, right? And I've gone through this before. One of my earliest videos, I went through this, and I didn't know half of the stuff that I know now, and it was just nonsense back then. It's a lot more egregious now. As they claim, the vision in that document was for people. It was achieved. Sorry, this vision is achieved equally for people from all ethnicities to build a Scotland where we all share common sense and purpose and belonging. However, when it starts to get a bit more malicious, is the Race Equality Action Plan, the final report from 2021. We have continued to make progress across many areas, including but not by no means limited to education, employment, housing, health, and culture. Yet racism persists in our communities, in our schools, and in our workplace. It is clear that we still have much to do, and this must be informed by evidence and by lived experience. Right? The Race Equality Action Plan is where the Building Racial Literacy program comes from, the critical race theory that is seeping into Scottish academia. So for this rotund specimen to smile piss poorly in it for the wee photo here and talk about racism and achieving equality, despite the fact what they're really referring to here with their hyperlink is critical race theory, anti-whiteism, you know, just saying. Anyway,
I do agree with that point, though. There is racism in the communities, and I think another good example to highlight that would be the video that No Chance shared on his Twitter and Telegram channel. The old pensioner that was jumped, a calculated cowardly attack by 5 black African imported products that no one asked or voted for. They simultaneously just got together and beat up an old guy on a train for fuck all. These big 5 black bravado bastards, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely pillaged that man for nothing. And this is just another example of what we're seeing playing out right across Europe. If you try to push back against certain narratives, whether it be Caucasian, because with the greatest respect, I don't think people in Denmark want Croatians living in Denmark. Denmark wants a healthy Denmark. Norway wants a healthy Norway. Scotland wants a healthy Scotland, so on and so forth, right? Whether it be from other parts of the world, China, India, Gambia, or fucking Latin America, right? This shit is being pushed on people without consulting the native people. This is just nothing more than guilt trip, fear, propaganda for people who, quite frankly, are vulnerable and impressionable with the society and the pollution of academia that we live in. This, nothing more, in my honest opinion, is a mere wankrag. It truly is. There is nothing in it of any beneficial impact for anyone in Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. This should be treated with such contempt. It should be highlighted as much, and anyone who comes in conversation promoting CRT or whatever the fuck it is in between should just be totally ignored and called a lunatic bastard.
Amen. But you do raise a good point there, because a lot of the narratives that they are continually perpetuating are stirring the pot. I mean, I'm not disputing the fact that a lot of BAMEs dislike white people in general, but with narratives that are so pervasive across society, that are reaffirmed by publications such as this, reaffirmed by activists, reaffirmed by the media, reaffirmed by education, reaffirmed by politicians, it does nothing but stir the pot and make things worse. And of course, it's done by design, by the people who hand down the documentation and the narratives for these people to peddle and push. But the people that are peddling and pushing these narratives, they're the only people that we can really focus on, because they're the people that show their faces. They're the people that put their name to these things. And half of them, I don't think, have a fucking clue what they're talking about, in all honesty. For them to stand there with a straight face and speak of anti-racism and whatnot, and systemic racism and institutional racism, they have no idea what they're talking about, because it's predicated on falsehoods by and large. But underneath the surface, it's just anti-white shit.
Oh, 100%. It kind of again, it's another mechanism to try and kind of curb your thought, because we had a conversation, right, a wee laugh and a joke about the whole duck it and the does situation on a previous stream, right? There is expressions that are very regional and unique to Scotland as a whole. You get it in England, again, Wales, Northern Ireland, and everywhere else for that matter, right? Now, in Scotland, and that isn't racist to say, this is expressions that you grow up with. As an example, it's black as 2 in the morning, or you're feeling market, that means you're feeling dirty, you're feeling black, right? These are things that were just a part of normal conversation. It wasn't as if people were, curtain twitching, waiting to see a person of colour going by, going, yeah, I feel black. This fear point again, right? To try and curb normal expressions within our culture and society is embedded within that. It takes away normal tongues, and therefore you lose a part of your character, because these things become a thing of the past and no past generation to generation. It's a despicable, cowardly wankrag.
Amen. Amen to that. Where's this go? Yeah. For anybody that's not seen the video, I would suggest checking No Chances. Did he put it on Twitter? I don't know. But it's on Telegram anyway. Pretty egregious. But one thing that there's a commonality with a lot of these videos, as horrible as they are. It's the same thing. It's the pack mentality. It wasn't a pleasant watch, admittedly, but yeah.
Another thing with this, sorry, is it talks about rights. It talks about rights, so that everybody, can have a benefit to society. Now, Scotland isn't the only place that's getting shit like this, right? But it might not be of the same community stroke group, but it affects the same people, the children. When you're seeing these paedophiles in New York City standing there with their wee Tommy tank suit, and children are walking down the street, it's absolutely deplorable. You can't have equality of outcome for everyone when it's going to affect severely the most impressionable and vulnerable in society. They don't care about equality of outcome. They care about the absolute maximum level of social decline and degeneracy that they can achieve as an outcome. This is where this is pretty much going to be the final stop at when this comes to its head. This is going to be like the Weimar Republic. It's going to be like, absolute cesspit, the worst parts of the Bible. It's not an outcome. It's basically a depletion and an erosion of your society.
On the Weimar, I don't think we're that far off that at this point, in all honesty. I really don't. In Scotland, you made a point that it's not just limited to Scotland, but it's hard to argue that there's many countries out there that are indeed worse than Scotland at this point. Yeah, I can think
and that's
of a few.
Terrifying.
It is. In such a short space of time. This isn't even a case of me being ignorant in my teens and whatnot. I wholeheartedly believe that maybe the wheels were in motion, but it wasn't that long ago when I was a teenager. I wholeheartedly believe, to myself anyway, that it wasn't that bad back then. It's so egregious the way things are going now. acceleration is probably the best way to describe it.
No, I'd agree with that. I think especially with maybe within the last like 15 to 20 years within Scotland, if you were a pervert, you weren't openly bragging about it like the way they now do nowadays. They really don't.
Yeah.
If you hated your country, if you hated your community, if you hated any fabric of Scottish society, you might have been disgruntled, but you weren't vocal about it because people would basically, call you out and fucking you would go way back and hide in the house. But nowadays we're appropriating that behaviour where foreign flags of display on our lands that would never have flown in days gone by. The whole scary element of what you've raised there within a short space of time to what's been normalised, it's absolutely despicable.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I thought you were going to keep going there.
No, I mean, I'm just cautious, obviously, to get through your slides as well, so I don't want to go on too much about it.
No worries. No, just there was like a sudden pause there. I thought you were going to continue what you were saying there, but I pretty much agree, or very much agree, I should say. But yeah, you're no wrong. There's 113 pages in this. I'm not entirely sure I'll get through the entirety of it. Like it's impossible. But they're first theme one, so we'll go through some of the themes. But we'll see what's said in each and every one. Our vision for a fairer Scotland, is that by 2030, Scotland is a place where people are healthier, happier, and treated with respect. I am so sick of this shit when they talk like that as well. It's not their job. It's not the government's job to ensure that you are healthy. If I want to be a fat, unhealthy tosspot, I shall be. It's not their job. This is nanny state garbage. But again, underneath the surface line, it's about control, and it's about them dictating the trajectory of lives and the country, all under the guise of looking after you. Treated with respect and with opportunities, wealth and power are spread more equally. Where have we heard that shit before? The race equality framework aims to ensure that this vision is achieved equally for people from all ethnicities, helping to build a fairer Scotland. So they want to ensure robust accountability and scrutiny of Scottish Government's commitments to embedding anti-racism across its work and not off the public sector via newly established anti-racism observatory in Scotland. Right now, we all know what anti-racism is, of course. First, you have to establish how they define racism, and it comes in many different forms, and only white people can be racist. Building a Scotland that is an inclusive, safe, and prosperous, I would call it preposterous, place to live that recognizes the value of and celebrates the diversity of its people, and where you respect, protect, and fulfill human rights and live free from discrimination. They say here that they want to develop a Scottish civil service that has the knowledge, skills, and confidence and promote equalities, including anti-racism across their work. So, a civil service that embeds and promotes anti-racism. Enhancing the human rights of women, disabled people, and racialized minorities. This is another trope that they use very often, racialized minorities, because the implication is that race doesn't exist, playing again into these sort of notions that white people just gallivanted around the world, kidnapping little brown men for their slave trade, and created the idea of race to justify it. And there's no scientific basis whatsoever. Therefore, race is fake and scientifically racist, etc. Through the development of a new human rights legislation in Scotland, which will incorporate the United Nations human rights treaties into Scots law. Yes, so we've got a new human rights bill coming out, which incorporates 4 UN charters, all of which will supersede Scots law, all of which adhere to and pander to every classed or described oppressed group within Scotland, except white men, of course. So that's women, children, old people. So I suppose that would include old white men and BAMEs. Community and cohesion and safety. They want to tackle hatred and prejudice in Scotland through the delivery of the hate crime strategy, which will set out key priorities for tackling hatred and prejudice, including implementation of the Hate Crime and Public Order Act of 2021. That hate crime bill that's still not coming into effect yet. Enhancing data quality across the justice system to better understand and serve the needs of Scotland's communities via the Cross Justice Working Group, and improve how complaints against Police Scotland are handled. Okay. Anything you've got to say so far? Or...
I think the language again's been quite telling within this, because at the start it says about, making everyone happier and healthier, and basically life's going to be absolutely fantastic if you live in Scotland with all these guidelines. Well, here's the thing, folks. Over the last 2 to 3 years, during the jib jab years, we've seen that everyone wasn't happy and healthy in Scotland. You were subjected like an animal in a cage within a veterinary clinic. That's exactly what happened to you, and you were told that that was going to happen to you, and you were going to smile about it because it was for your benefit, despite people dying behind their doors. That doesn't sound like a happy, peaceful outcome. That sounds like absolute genocide to me, nonetheless. Again, when we hear about everyone's going to be happy, who determines what happy is? On a serious note, there's very different variations of happiness. People could be happy within a large metropolitan city. People could be happy out in the countryside. People could be happy with, living a minimalistic lifestyle. And some people want to have hoard. And, each to their own. But the point being here is it's key to get the definitions of what each part of that language means. And quite frankly, they'll never be able to do that because they can't achieve the equality outcome for everybody because everyone has different views. The racialised language within this section, again, is more appeasement and pandering to an absolute minority, although at the same time, which is quite funny because if people were smart enough and read between the lines, they did actually address that there is different ethnicities in Scotland and not everybody can be Scottish. But out with that, I fully agree with everything that you said, mate.
And I fully agree with everything you've said. How would you look at that? Apart from the one thing I will say, they never actually define Scottish because anybody can be Scottish. It's just there's different ethnicities within Scotland. There's no Scottish ethnicity though. We are classed as white Scottish, whereas everybody else gets their own cute little label, such as Bangladeshi Scottish or whatever the case may be. Nobody's actually Scottish in this context, according to them anyway. But I love this as well. It says improving equality, diversity, and inclusion within Police Scotland, with the launch of Police Scotland's Policing Together strategy, which brings together multiple strands of work from across Police Scotland, bolstered by the Chief Constable's commitment to ensure there is no tolerance for misogyny, racism, and discrimination in the ranks or across wider society. Oh, so it's up to the police to ensure that there's no racism or misogyny or discrimination in wider society, apparently. But again, define racism, define misogyny, define discrimination even, Because if you start to do that, you come to find that the old terms have new and improved definitions. Ensuring stop and search by Police Scotland is carried out with fairness, integrity, and respect, and irrespective of ethnicity, because the assumption is, of course, that the police stop brown people because they're brown. Or are they stopping the Neds of Glasgow because they were white? No.
Well, no. Of course, this is a good point because I was going to kind of bring that point up. Growing up, as I've said to you, at the back end of the east side of the city all my days, and all political Easterhouse nonetheless. If you look like an arsehole, the police would stop you. This was common practice. And when I was growing up, there wasn't many ethnic minorities running about. So I would be quite curious as to when these statistics, that people of black, brown, and yellow, because we've always had Chinese, well, not always, but we've had Chinese in this country for a long time. I've never heard them moaning about it. Never, in Chinese, within their little communities going, oh no, the police are getting us because we're yellow. Totally non-existent. Non-existent. This is just more pandering to the appeasement of that, banana mailman and the other guy that happened to be a junkie pandering a knife to folks. Like, this is just absolute levels of fucking woke bullshit. Oh, we're sorry, it'll never happen again. Well, no wonder, like, the police put me fucking junkie arsehole. I'm glad that he did.
Sorry. Sorry. Fucking hell. Oh, Jesus. But no. But I will to the Ned thing. Ned's dressed a certain way and embrace a certain culture. Black people dress, not all, dress a certain way and embrace a certain culture, both of which are more involved in crime, shall we say, both of which Ned's in their day, more so in our black gun culture today, involve carrying knives. The police used to stop and search in abundance Ned's in Glasgow to such a point that they actually managed to crack down on knife crime. Right? This is a fact. One of the methods that they used to crack down on knife crime in Glasgow when it was like the knife capital of the fucking world, or at least in a European context, was stop and search. Now, because of these, as you call them, woke dickheads, right? The ideology, the narrative that's professed is that they are stopped because they are black. It's not because they're black in and of itself. It's because stereotypically, black gangsters or wannabe gangsters carry fucking knives, right? It's pretty simple. And quite often, with a lot of the points throughout this document, the same with everything that gets said by politicians and activists alike, quite often you could pick apart their narratives, but you're never given the airtime to do so. So their narrative is allowed to float through the ether, gaining momentum and being reaffirmed by every policy that comes out to rectify the issues that are claimed by these activists. Yeah.
I would wonder, could there be, right, on a serious note, could there be a case to be made that the police within, we'll say, the Congo or Sierra Leone are inherently racist because they're pulling over black people? On a serious note, and people might go, duh, but on a serious note, there is a majority ethnic white population, Scotland, and there hasn't been a large influx until I would say perhaps
20 years.
4 or 5 years. You know, pretty much after after September 11th. So these statistics, and if it's minute in the numbers of what they're saying, then the statistics of what they're pointing at, which I believe is bullshit anyway, but they would be very, very minute. Think about it on a serious note. They would be basically non-existent if the immigration numbers coming in are as low as what they've been telling us. See, they can't have their cake and eat it. There's always a flip side to it. So, because obviously it's a lie on top of another lie, a lie on top of another lie, the minute you start peeling it back and looking at things rationally, it loses its weight. The argument ultimately loses its weight. And I would like to think that when you look at police forces up and down, as much as the police forces, you know, stink by a large part, places like London, places like Manchester, places like Liverpool, Birmingham, and Preston, etc. I don't think somebody wakes up and goes like that, oh, can't wait to pull me a brown one today. No, I think they're going out there, they're doing their job, and you get these hooligans out in mass numbers like they do in any other city in the fucking country, and they congregate and they start talking all that stupid language, and they sound like a pound shot fucking orchestra, blah, bling, bing, ting. Fuck that. No, the police have got every right to go out there and grill them and get them to fuck to move on, because normal people just don't want to deal with that bullshit in society, walking about with their pants sticking up with their denims. Fucking dress properly and fuck off, Taiwan.
Exactly. Exactly. They're doing their job. And I mean, even with the Sheikh Dubai thing now, they're insisting it's racism because they did their job. You know, like that was an open and shut case for many years. Then George Floyd occurred, and then they've now reopened the case with one caveat to determine if his death was racially motivated. It's ridiculous.
But, you know, just before we move on, at that time, no chance, I can't remember. If you know, somebody else in the chat knows, just jump in and correct me, right? But there was a wee chap in America that got the exact same treatment.
Tony
I'm pretty sure,
Timper.
isn't it? Tony Timper. And that kind of just like, oh, right. It didn't even make like a blog. You know,
No.
all these pedal pushers of a fair and just society just became all silent, like
Yeah.
fucking nocturnal animals, like owls that just went to sleep. So
Hmm.
when we're talking about, again, equality outcome for all, it's non-existent. It can't be achieved.
No, not by their standards anyway. Absolutely not. Because as far as they're concerned, they're punching up. Minority ethnic participation and representation is to be valued, effective, fair, and proportionate at all levels of political, community, and public life. So they want to increase diversity within public boards through encouraging people from racialized minorities to apply for public appointments, for those applications to be successful, and for the conditions to be right for people to achieve the best when they are on board. Improving the way people take part in open policy making and delivering services through a newly launched participation framework, which provides a guide to good practice and participation work across Scottish Government, including about participatory methods and when to use them. Right? A lot of waffle. Empowering communities, including racialized minorities, to develop cultural activities, right? Addressing Scotland's involvement in empire, colonialism, and historic slavery, using museum collections and museum spaces based on the recommendations of the Empire Slavery and Scotland's Museum Steering Group, led by Remember we did a 3-hour stream on this little fucker? You
Oh my
remember that?
god, man! Honestly, like Uncle Ben needs to take a chill pill.
Aye.
See, on a serious note, see if we're talking about it, people talk about the empire, right? And this is their go-to thing because all the Kang empires in the fucking whole continent, it doesn't even compare to like the rice paddies temples that were built in Southeast Asia. Like there is no even any compromise. The fact of the matter is this, right? The empire, for how you view it, put your feelings to a side. It went into different parts of the world, right? And people picked up the technology, people picked up the work and the infrastructure that was put in place, and they thrived. The Chinese, the Latin Americans, Australia, everybody thrived. But here's what the problem is, and it's a problem that doesn't get highlighted enough. You can go on to Google to any mediocre, and I use that word very deliberately, mediocre source that doesn't align with your political views, and you will look at the whole continent and you will find an IQ the equivalent to a dolly mixture. I'm not even exaggerating, folks. This here is just to appease people for being inferior. They look at Europe, they come to Scotland, they see the nice castles, they see the nice cities, they see there's a lot of rich history. We've got, our own wee uniqueness. The same with England, beautiful cities, lush countryside, rich history. And they think, oh, if it wasn't for wee Tyrone and Shakinda, these countries wouldn't be built. If you truly, truly, truly had a museum for these people, it would be a fucking wooden board as a shield, a spear tip, and some kind of witchcraft fucking necklace. That is literally it. There is nothing else to be remotely said on it because they've offered nothing of unique greatness to the world. But remember, this is the people that were every ethnic people under the sun, and yet to this day still couldn't build a fucking IKEA shelf.
Well, they did build the pyramids, though. Allegedly. Oh. For fuck's sake.
He's right,
Oh, anyway. Education, no. Now, this is obviously a very touchy one for obvious reasons, considering it's our children. Education and lifelong learning. Everyone has the opportunity to learn in an inclusive environment without disadvantage. The assumption being with a statement like this that disadvantage exists with the sole institutional racism, and this disadvantage exists or was created to hold back brown people. So we need to do things to hold back white people in order to achieve equality. Yes. Supporting reform in the education system through the anti-racism in education program to develop and embed anti-racism and culturally responsive leadership and practice throughout the curriculum, strengthening resources and approaches to prevent and respond to racist incidents, and diversifying the education workforce in Scotland to ensure that it reflects and supports the racial diversity of modern Scotland. Now, this anti-racism in education program is something I've been talking about for the best part of 2 years now. Obviously, abbreviated, it's the REAR-REP program or REAR-REP program, and it's the government's anti-racism in education program, and it was established in response to the significant amount of correspondence received by the Deputy First Minister, who was dickhead John Swinney at the time, as part of the Black Lives Matter movement, and one of the recommendations made by the COVID-19 ethnicity expert group seeking to include the teaching of Black history in the curriculum, because COVID-19 killed more Black people, even though COVID, quote, quote, killed more Black people. So therefore we need Black history in the curriculum. I'll stop COVID 2.0, you know? But anyway, just to go down here ever so slightly, to show you who is in this subgroup. You've got your wee subgroups here. Curriculum reform is where I first found the section dedicated to anti-critical race theory that they scrapped a week after I uploaded the video. I mean, I can't say for certain it's got something to do with me, but it's a bit questionable. But who do we see?
Can you look at the mem? Oh no, there she's there.
There she
Oh,
is.
there. Fuck's sake.
Then we've got her as well, the other one, Nazut Utamani. You know, there's a rake of them down here.
Stop. I'm just having a wee nosy here, right? So this is obviously Scotland. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 people where it looks like you would have to assume by a large part, if not Scottish, that it's at least British names by the looks of it. That's quite interesting. Out of 1, 2, 3, 12. I mean, that's and I thought we're talking about representation here. The minority again with the over representation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's more on all the wee subgroups as well. Further up here, curriculum reform, racism and racist incidents, diversity in the teaching profession, all these different subgroups. There's even more BAMEs. I mean, yeah, there is the odd white cuck, but by and large, mainly BAMEs. So what else have we got here? Supporting all young people to achieve their potential, including those from ethnic minorities, by working collaboratively with third sector organizations. Right? Okay. We've got supporting racialized minorities to experience better outcomes in completing further and higher education through the development of guidance for colleges and universities and setting evidence-based measurable equality outcomes. It's all about equality outcomes, never opportunity anymore, because it's a white supremacist trope to suggest that you live in a meritocracy. Minority ethnic people have equal, fair, and proportionate access to employment and representation at all levels, because the assumption, again, is that currently at present they don't have all of these opportunities handed to them on a plate. No, so therefore we need to put things in place to further prioritize them. Now, take all their shit aside, we're supposed to live in a meritocracy, so anything, even if it's the slightest thing to advantage them over the others, is giving them leverage, and therefore it's no longer a level playing field. But as it currently stands, it's already unbalanced anyway in their favour. Things like this, suggestions like this, proposals like this, and policies and whatnot that come out of the back of suggestions like this further enhances that problem.
This is the thing that, again, income and inequalities, right? So this isn't hard to look at, people. It's either people willfully choosing not to believe it, which would obviously make them reckless and stupid and naive, or it's people's ignorance for not looking at these things. But as we're seeing play out up and down the country with different strikes, people are fighting for, equal pay or better pay. It isn't white pay, it isn't yellow pay, it's just pay. There's people of all colours in every working sector up and down the country. So to turn around and say, that these people are being limited to the job roles that they can get, or they're being limited to the income. If you get a black poor person in Scotland, I can show you a poor homeless person in Scotland. I could literally make it a tit for tat thing. The fact of the matter is this, and again, this is like the very simplistic thing that needs to be highlighted continuously to these fucking idiots. There is no set rule or law in Scotland that actually prohibits any person of colour at any walk of life at any given time to go into a school, to go into a college, to go into a workplace and be turned down based on their beliefs or their colour out with the white typical Caucasian male. There is none. You will not find it any place whatsoever. Another thing that I want to point out is that we're continuously seeing up and down the country that the attainment gap in education is getting bigger, it's getting worse. And when they do the statistics, it turns out to be white boys that are, least well off in the classes. So there is no claim or case to be made that minorities are least off in society. In fact, they are more advantageous within society. And another fact to back that up would be the grants for businesses that have been held out within the last 5 years, priority within the last 2 to 3 years for being businesses to help communities obviously enhance and flourish. Because of the COVID era, they were given preferential treatment again. So this is all hocus pocus again, as far as I'm concerned. Sorry for rambling, DJ.
Oh, I've been muted. Oh shit, my bad. Oh, I didn't even. I was just talking there for like 5 minutes. I've been muted. Oh, my bad. I'll just read that past. Are you there, right?
Mate, I thought it was me. I thought, fuck, my internet's went again. And I've just kind of went on a pure rant for fuck all. Then I came back in, I seen that your mute sign was on. I was like, oh no.
I went on a. Oh, that's bad. I went on a. I'm not going to repeat it, but it was about Graham Campbell there. I just sat there for ages, like going on about like Graham Campbell and something he said and that, and then my phone started ringing. I was like, oh no.
That was me. That was me. I was like, fuck, because I sent you a message, I think, PBC, Toffee, other folk, people in the chat were saying, you're muted. So I thought, fuck it, I'll phone him. And then I was like, he'll even answer the phone because he's on stream. What the fuck am I doing?
Oh, that was bad. Crisis averted that. I'll just move on though. Right. So look at this bit though, right? Because I did start talking about this. Following the racialized outcomes of the COVID-19 pandemic and the follow-on from the Black Lives Matter movement, the Scottish Government is committed to tackling a systemic and structural racism, recognising that understanding racism and taking a truly anti-racist position means acknowledging the existence of formal and informal institutional and cultural processes. This is our government.
Who was the first party that came into Holyrood? It was a gay. It was a gay, but it was a Labour party, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So that would have been what, perhaps Jack McConnell's Labour.
Yes, I think so.
Point being that I'm trying to get at here, right? If they're saying that there's structural and institutional racism within Scottish society, and that stems from the Parliament. The Parliament wasn't created until not that long ago, if I'm correct. And then you would probably say that every person, white, black, brown, yellow, whatever, since then has basically just took the mantelpiece to enforce more structural racism, which is all hocus pocus. Yet again, the point being that this is another kick in the can of, because you aren't basically black, brown, and yellow enough, your views are so racist. We need more multiculturalism, more diversity, more enrichment, because you can't have a strong state. And this is what they're obviously going to smash down the throats of kids, guilt tripping them into being perfectly white, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And by the way, it was Donald Dewar. Was the first.
Well,
I thought it was Jack McConnell as well, to be honest.
See, to be honest, he's only Tadger that sticks out in my head when I was thinking of.
Tad in my head. That was a great way to frame that. Sorry. Furthermore, a review of anti-racist policy making over the last 2 decades by the Coalition for Race, Equality and Rights identified that while devolved policy making has been able to identify clear themes and priorities across national strategies to tackle deep-rooted inequalities, actual progress has been limited in terms of design and implementation. In particular, the need to embed long-term change in systems and the processes was highlighted, moving away from short-term action plans. Furthermore, there was clear importance placed in appropriately utilizing and retaining information gathered from the engagement and lived experience, whilst avoiding consultation fatigue. And I got fatigue from reading that fucking paragraph out, I will not lie. So then they've got the race equality framework for Scotland 2016 to 2030 that I sort of touched upon briefly at the start. But funnily enough, it was Sir, Coalition for Race, Equality and Rights, who helped the Scottish Government to conjure up this report. So they've got their stakeholders there. According to Sir, their recent reports on anti-racist policymaking in Scotland, the findings show that a lack of evaluation and detailed progress monitoring provides insufficient evidence to determine which previous approaches worked. Progress reporting focuses on stating that the proposed actions have been taken. The only knowledge that policymakers can gain from this is the strategy was implemented. Right. Okay.
So, in other words, they tried to showcase what ability. It came up with absolute nothing, but they're still going to implement it nonetheless.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. Following this, the anti-racism interim governments group to develop national anti-racism infrastructure was established. This short life group was established in April 2022 as an independent group to provide advice directly to Scottish ministers and the Scottish Government. It will operate up to the end of August 2023 and until its remit is fulfilled and a permanent race equality governance body is established and functioning. Its remit is to provide independent oversight and to hold Scottish Government accountable for progress against the actions in the Intermediate Priorities Plan, provide scrutiny and advice on the work to establish a programme of systemic change on race equality, consider, gather evidence and propose the models to support the establishment of an independent observatory, and support and advise in the transition to a permanent governance body, and provide advice and feedback to Scottish ministers. Concluding on this, we recognise that to effectively address racial inequality and racism, it is crucial we have robust accountability mechanisms and oversight in place, and that we can measure and evidence outcomes and impacts. More information on forthcoming accountability and engagement approaches will be found in section 14 of this report. Yeah.
Can I just say, mate, if you don't mind, mate? See the first point, provide independent oversight and to hold the Scottish Government to account.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, I don't know why, but do you know the first thing that popped into my head? Have you ever read the Transatlantic Trade Bill?
No.
Right, so basically, that's a whole fucking lot of filth within its own world, and that's a conversation for another day. But there's a part in this Transatlantic Trade Bill that basically means that the corporations, for whatever reason, if they were to lose money through a term or through a means of, sorry, I should say that, legislation or certain red tape wasn't cut down, then the government could be taken to court by these corporations on an outside body, which means it wouldn't happen within a court of the country that it's being called to court, and they would be fined excess of hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And effectively what that meant is the corporations were holding them account on their mission statement, their ethos, and effectively their profits. And that just kind of seems very like for like there with what you laid out. And I know the transatlantic trade bill kind of coincides with a lot of Agenda 2030 stuff. It's just funny, like when you've read that out, that's the first thing that's popped into my head.
Yeah. First thing that came up my head there, like when you mentioned accountability, and well, I read it out as well, is they do this quite often where they'll have stakeholders and whatnot who are put into these positions by the government to allegedly hold them to account if they don't go far enough or whatever. But it's just all total tomfoolery in many respects. A good example of that would be the Scottish the First Minister's Women's Advisory Group, right? Now, this is a group of feminists that Nicola Sturgeon put into these positions to conjure up reports and recommendations every single year, feminist-inspired recommendations for society and education and whatnot. And the caveat was that if the government didn't do enough, they would be held to account. Not once have I ever seen them being held to account for any of these things, because as it stands, every recommendation is ever put forth by any of these groups, whether it be feministic in nature or anti-racism, etc., they always accept all of the recommendations. Now, to add on the flip side to that, obviously, a good example would be the Climate Change Committee and whatnot. They put forth a lot of recommendations, and the Scottish Government clearly aren't going far enough, despite the fact they've accepted all the recommendations, because I think they fall into the issue of buying into a lot of the rhetoric and mumbo-jumbo that's put forth by a lot of these crackpots who class themselves as experts, but they're just really activists. But there's not really much that they can do. There's not really much that can be done that's feasible to achieve the goals that these people are professing. So they'll accept the recommendations, they'll parrot the rhetoric and agree, but they can't really go any further than that. And that's where you see them being held to account. But it's very rare that you will see it. As far as the feminist shit or the anti-racism shit, they're going pretty damn far with it. But here are in some of their goals. I skipped through a few of them there, just because obviously cautious of time to a certain extent, and I'm only on page 25. But we've got participation and representation and actions through our public boards and corporate diversity program. I mean, everything. Have you not noticed, though, on a side note, there's a key theme here with this document. The vast majority of paragraphs that I have read through is the Scottish Government referring to things that they're speaking about as if this was common knowledge to the public that we all knew existed. What the fuck is their public board and corporate diversity program? When was that ever spoken about at the SNP's up-and-coming election when Nicola Sturgeon was driving about in her wee CO2-emitting bus with the Stop Brexit shit on the side of it, with that ugly mug of hers, and as if that was supposed to be some selling point for a campaign election? I don't fucking know, but the point remains the same. Did she ever, at any point, waddle her fat little arse out of the bus to stand there and say, vote for me is a vote for our diversity and inclusion corporate program? No, you didn't hear that.
Have you not noticed there's a common theme here with a lot of things? So we're doing this, we're implementing this, we're doing this, all these programs, government taxpayer funded, may I add. Where's this in the manifestos? I mean,
Well, I mean that is it's a good question. I mean, a lot of the things that you, in no chance for your videos you put out there, a lot of it isn't public knowledge because a lot of it isn't mainstream because this is obviously the devil in the detail where they try to do a lot of things subtly and you take things on good faith. It's like what Nicola Sturgeon would have been better off saying, effectively going around the country with that fucking ridiculous haircut, coming off the bus in places like Aberdeen, Dundee, Edinburgh, Glasgow, so on and so forth, and going, "Hi, I'm Nicola Sturgeon. This is my travelling band of lesbians, and we're here to sexually corrupt your children." That people would have known they've got. They would have went, "That Nicola, she's a nice woman." Whilst obviously they're telling Wayne how to masturbate in school, they're not going to commit and tell that because they know that right away parents' backs are going to be up and they're going, "Say fucking what? What? They won't and will not do that." It's like the race literature, the anti-white propaganda that's been spilled out in the things that are still yet to come. They won't be telling Wayne's that when Wayne's get signed up for school. They won't be telling parents that when they're taking the kids into nursery for the first day. The only time people kind of find this is perhaps in secondary school when maybe they'll be starting to talk about certain subjects and maybe parents will be perhaps somewhat switched on enough to go, "Well, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Why is wee Davy coming home and kind of saying, you're evil and inherently scum for being white?" Because this is the language subtly used that they're putting at kids. But again, it's a very common and it's a very repetitive theme throughout all these different policies. It can sound like you might be coming in an echo chamber or you might be stuttering or very repetitive, but you have to stress this, folks. Like, this is going to be used at the absolute maximum within every capacity that they possibly can. If they can put things out there subconsciously, when they eventually put that on the television, you're more prone to accept it, like they've done in the newspapers throughout the years with different things.
no, I would agree. A good example of that, very briefly, and I'm going to show a wee video here. It's only 2 minutes on my channel that's got a pitiful amount of views, despite the fact it's disgusting. But a good example of that would be how the Scottish government, for example, love to talk about free childcare. Right now, to most people who have to make ends meet and whatnot, that sounds like a viable, alternative to forking out for a babysitter or whatever. Right, if you don't have a grandparent at home or whatever to look after your child, right? But what they don't tell you, and what I have come to find and I've shown in videos, is that in this free childcare setting, right, they have got teams set up, their own words, teams set up from Education Scotland to create gender-friendly environments, right? Now they're starting to encompass sustainability education and whatnot, but it's child-friendly, it's age-appropriate, and I know that term sounds somewhat questionable because none of it's appropriate, but it's sort of depending on the age group of children, it will be geared towards them at each and every level, right? But gender-friendly environments. So you're effectively putting your child into state-funded feminist education where they don't refer to the little boys and girls as boys and girls. In fact, they go out of their way to try and encourage the little girls to undertake boy activities and vice versa, right? You have no idea that this is going on because one of two things. You don't pay attention or it's just not been implemented at your nursery as of yet. But mark my words, it's coming because it's written in our documents. Right, and on that note, let me just play you a little clip here since we're on the subject of racism. It's not really going off topic. I'm going to mute my mic and I'm going to play this because this is Scottish education in a nutshell, folks.
A target is for all teachers to analyse the curriculum with criticality. A helpful tool for decolonising the curriculum is the anti-racist critical thinking model. It can be applied to lessons, topics, resources, novel studies, and even school events. We started small with every teacher using this model to review one area of the curriculum each term. Most chose to focus on their social studies or topic work. Primary 1 made changes to their Wonderland topic, bringing in fairy tales and more diverse culture, and also challenged gender stereotypes. Our primary fives found more diverse historical figures to study and widened their topic to include slavery. Our P7 World War II topic was widened to include the soldiers from the British Indian Army, who were part of the world's largest volunteer army. When decolonising the curriculum, we looked at building a wider range of perspectives into the work that we already do. This made it more manageable for colleagues. Staff were asked to consider stereotypes, assumptions, and whose voice is not heard. This was aligned with key themes of social justice and global citizenship. I'm really fortunate to work with a fantastic team, and they took the lead in many areas. A dedicated group of teachers created a series of lessons on equity and diversity for nursery-age children through to those in P7. The senior school pupil diversity group reviewed our materials and our lessons. The evaluation of primary pupils was very positive, with the children showing a real interest and commitment to promoting a culture of diversity and equity.
Couple of things that are absolutely hoaching with that, in my opinion, DJ. There's a couple of things hoaching with that, but I'll let you say what you've got to say first, mate.
It was more that, it paused there on my end, and I ended the video, which I regretfully did, because the next thing she said was in nursery.
Yeah, I mean,
She
we
went to
heard
talk
there
about
as well. She
nursery.
said about 5-year-olds, mate. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, never mind nurseries. 5-year-olds getting
Mhm.
gender stereotype roles. Well, let's be absolutely crystal clear with this. And we'll use one example to highlight why certain people do certain things. There is absolutely no way in hell Sally and Tina are running up into a burning building and getting 18 stone Tom over their shoulders and doing the building. That doesn't happen. That's like the Black Mermaid. That is pie in the sky. That is hocus pocus. Never going to happen. This deliberate agenda which is happening to children right now is sickening, because it's going to cause more confusion. It does more harm than it does do benefits. And the whole again, if we're talking about empire, like earlier on, there was some part about the fucking empire previously up on one of the slides. There you go, the voluntary army. It wasn't as if the British were going around going like, "Oh, well, you're brown, you have to fight for us." So they can't have their cake and tell you where you're inherently systemically evil because of the things that you've done. But here, one of the largest voluntary militaries of all time just happened to sign up for this apparent evil regime. The absolute holes that you find in these arguments, the fundamental at that is absolutely staggering. I would be wholeheartedly convinced, and I mean this, like we've seen on the video that was played with the young lassies in England with their school teacher. If kids are getting into school and are somewhat smart enough, they're going to embarrass their teachers big time.
Yeah. Then it brings you back to what you said near the start of the stream, though, where the children's rights and whatnot, if they have the wrong opinion, well. But no, you're not wrong. You're really not wrong. And I do hope to see, I mean, I think, though, what's worrying is the main reason that I shared that video there was the ages of the children, like the children that they were referring to there. It's very difficult to maintain a semblance of hope for the generations of the future, or even maintain a semblance of hope that they will have any intelligence or capability to critically think when they're being targeted at such young ages. You know, it goes back to the old LGBT Youth Scotland video that we covered on our stream back in 2020, where the gay guy goes that children are like sponges. They soak in information at a very young age. Well, if they're soaking in this revisionist version of events, this biased version of events, this, well, blatantly at times incorrect version of events and racially charged narratives that are, anti-white in nature, what fucking hope do they have in many respects?
I
These
remember being at
teenagers.
school, mate, and you raise a good point, and it's kind of just dawned on me, like, you're at school and this is going to be a little bit spicy, what I'm going to say. Well, it'll be taken as spicy, but it's no spicy to everyday folk like us and people in the chat. You go to school and you get taught about Joseph Goebbels being an absolute mastermind and convincing a whole nation to rise up in hatred and whatnot. And I'm not advocating for anything along those lines. I just want you to think about the simplistic message and what I'm saying here. You're told this narrative about this individual and the damage that he'd done, right? But if we look at the Western world right now, and we look particularly at countries like Scotland, like England, like Ireland, France, Canada, I'm just going to use them. And if you look at the absolute nutters that are running campaigns, educational campaigns at that, health campaigns, Joseph Goebbels couldn't tie their fucking boots. On a serious note, couldn't tie their boots because the things that these people are getting away with is frightening. Absolutely fucking frightening.
Well, sorry, I don't disagree. I'm just scrolling through this at the same time as listening to you. But here's some statistics for you as well, by the way. I'll share my screen again. Sorry. It's very difficult to multitask, yeah. I'm not very good at it. Here we go. Here's some stats. Scottish Government recently published a review of quantitative evidence relating to ethnicity in the justice system. The Ethnicity in the Justice System Evidence Review collates existing data from a range of sources onto one compendium for the first time, presenting a picture of what is currently known about the experience of different ethnic groups within Scotland's justice system. The evidence review includes analysis of the Scottish Crime and Justice Service data, ethnicity using a pool sample of data collected from 2008 to 2020. All right. To investigate how experiences and perceptions of crime may vary for people of different ethnicities in Scotland. The analysis includes people's experiences and perceptions of crime, community safety, and the justice system in Scotland. Key findings include people who identify as African, Caribbean, or Black have a higher rate of victimization than the national average. Perceptions. People who identify as white, minority, ethnic, and African, Caribbean, or Black are more likely than the national average to think that the national crime rate has stayed the same or gone down in the last 2 years. Those who identify as Asian and African, Caribbean, or Black have a higher level of fear that they will be the victim to both property crimes and violent crimes. People who identify as Asian are less likely to say they feel safe walking alone in their local area after dark, whilst those from a mixed or multiple or white minority ethnic group feel safer compared to the national average. People from all minority ethnic groups are more likely to hold positive views of the police than the national average. What? Okay. People from minority ethnic groups tend to have more positive views of the justice system than the national average. However, their expectations for those from minority ethnic groups have a more negative view of the justice system. These relate to the fairness and treatment of those accused of crime. So these two bullet points here, if my mouse would stop being a dick, kind of contradict the sort of narrative that they're so hell-bent on trying to perpetuate, that, you know, the police are institutionally racist and whatnot, when it states here, according to this anyway, that BAMEs in general hold more positive views of the police. I don't understand that. But and the
It's
last
weird,
one,
mate, because I'll add this very quickly, mate. See, the reason why this is bullshit is because I'll use Glasgow as an example. Although it's starting to really grow, by a large part, throughout well before I was born, the south side has historically, like parts of London and Birmingham, have been a staunch centre for where these people would just live amongst themselves. They've never really broadened out until the last number of years. So for folk of colour to turn around and say that they don't feel safe walking through the community, predominantly in 99.9% of cases where they only live amongst each other, should kind of spell out the obvious pattern, the elephant in the room. And they refuse to integrate. Not that I'm advocating for it, but I'll give you an example. I don't know if Sensum's still in the chat, but there was a stream that him, Tam, and Bonnie Lad done last year, and one of the funny points was it last year? Was it the year before? An Afghani family had moved up to Fort William, and they were like totally depressed and wanted to move to London because that's where their community are. Fort William, probably one of the safest parts of the UK, probably very, very low crime, very good standard of living, but they want to move to London. And this just further highlights the absolute ridiculous nature of these statistics.
No, I agree. I mean, that did cross my mind as well, because I mean, it's the same even in America and whatnot. You know, as cliche as some of these talking points are at this point, because they're so overused. May I add as a caveat though, you have to overuse or continue to use these classified overused talking points purely on the basis that they're relevant. You know, in America, for example, some of the safest states are the most white. Some of the safest areas in America are the most whitest suburbs and whatnot. In the more multi-culti ghettos and whatnot, things take a turn for the worse. And the same thing is applicable for Scotland. The most diverse, quote-unquote, parts of Scotland are the most unsafe to live. The most homogenous parts of Scotland are the most crime-free, by and large, and the safest place to live. Point in case, Highlands of Scotland versus Glasgow. Let's do a little crime stat, comparison, shall we? See what you find.
Well, that's just on a serious note. There's no need to go there because of someone who is living amongst the fucking melting pot. It's very high and it's very unkind for a city that's a complete change of what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. And whereas me, on the other hand, and this isn't me rubbing it in, I'm simply saying where I live, the Highlands, I don't see it. But I'm one of the very few people up my way who can see what's coming and resent what's coming and feel nothing but dismay and distress at the fact that nobody else around me can see what's coming. Do we really have to find ourselves up here in the Highlands of Scotland in the same shit show that Glasgow finds itself in? Clearly we fucking do. Because sadly we live in a society where until problems are on your front door, you don't really care. So, participation and representation. Participation in political and public life is crucial to empowering individuals and groups. It's essential to eliminating marginalization and discrimination. It is inseparably linked to other human rights, such as the rights to freedom of opinion and expression. And the irony of this, because I did scroll past it, but there was a section dedicated to the hate crime bill in Scotland. So for them to talk about freedom of opinion and expression, despite the fact they intend to implement a hate crime bill that was passed in 2021, just not come into law yet, right? That's just a joke. The key purpose of participation is a shift to power. It's to shift power. And what did I say at the start of the stream? For anybody that's been watching the stream from the very start, commendable if you have. You've endured my moment of embarrassment where I muted myself. But without reading through this document in full, which I haven't, I skimmed through it and I've read certain sections that I was focusing on for my own amusement, so to speak. I made a point at the start of the stream where I made reference to power. And there's, again, it's a consistent theme throughout this document. It's a consistent theme throughout most of the rhetoric and publications that come out, pertaining to this very topic of quote anti-racism. They hide behind the guise of achieving equality and simply trying to rid the world and rid society of all of the woes such as discrimination, etc. But beneath the surface, beneath the wet wipery and the language, is simply a means to obtain power. As outlined in the Scottish Government's participation framework, those facing the greatest inequalities also face the greatest barrier to participation in decision and policy-making processes. These include direct and indirect discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity. I love this as well. Indirect. This is just the equivalent of unconscious bias. Indirect discrimination. What's that?
Well, that kind of ties in with the hate crime bill. Remember, Hamza had turned around and said that when he spoke about this in Parliament, it's not necessarily about you say an individual. It's who can indirectly. It's like who's potentially eavesdropping in a conversation that could take offence. Therefore, it would still be categorised as a hate crime, although you haven't said something directly to the person that takes offence.
Yeah. No, exactly. And look at this paragraph here. Not this paragraph, this wee sentence. It says here, this is a vicious circle, right? Without understanding the perspectives of those most excluded in our society, policies continue to be designed that do not meet their needs and which continue or even worsen inequality. Wait, sorry, no, it was this bit here, sorry. Otherwise, inequality continues to be reproduced and power is not shifted. That was the bit I was meant to read. Power is not shifted. Right? This is about power. It's so blatant. Like, and the narrative that they try to use is that if they obtain quote unquote power, racism and all the shit of the world will cease to exist, right? The other assumption or the implication from a statement like that is who's currently in power? Who are they suggesting is currently in power? Who are they constantly attacking on a daily basis that needs to be taken down a peg or two? White men. Right?
Aye. Well, the thing is, with that, I mean, sorry, the thing is with that, and I think I'd said earlier on in the stream, it's about like the deconstruction of your society. And again, the language is pretty much right there again. This isn't because again, and they obviously know that you don't achieve an equality of outcome for all. So the only thing to do is like what the Bolsheviks have pretty much always done, because these people are pretty much communistic driven with the political philosophies, is to put barriers up that censors speech, thought, value, and morality. Once they erode you from the inside, they guilt trip you as if you're the problem. Then they make the quick power grab. Then the tables get turned to where you're openly persecuted in your own lands, which we have been seeing playing out with numbers of people all across Europe, whether it be grooming gangs, whether it be women being attacked, whether it be children being attacked, or whether it's old age pensioners being attacked on a fucking train. This is a standard copy and paste play that these evil bastards have done for years.
Hey, man. No, you're not wrong. It's so cliche because you hear the likes of Sargon talking about fucking, Marxism and whatnot, but there is absolutely aspects of fucking Bolshevism at play here. Now, I'm not the most clued up on all things economically speaking when it comes to fascism and communism and whatnot. Not really that guy. I'm not an economics guy, right? But I've read enough to know that's exactly what this is. Even, as we know, where the term racism initially came from to begin with. It's absolutely what this is. They've just copy and pasted the mantra, and instead of this being about bourgeoisie and proletariats, this is now about race. This as well, though, so increased participation and representation of minority ethnic individuals in governance and influence in decision-making at local and national level. A Race Equality Action Plan for Public Appointments was published in 2019, aiming to encourage people from racialized minorities, this fucking language, man, to apply for public appointments, for those applications to be successful, for the conditions to be right, for people to be able to give their best when they are on board. The number of racially minoritized people applying and being successful in the appointments process is improving, as outlined in the table below. Then I love this though. They reached shortlists. Yeah. So obviously in 2017, 7% of BAMEs applied, right? 7% reached the shortlist. Is this? Oh my god! But there a big difference though. So in 2017, it was 7% applied, 1.8 were appointed, and in 2021, 10.3% applied, and 8% were appointed. Pretty big jump. New appointments made, then we have race. New appointments made are increasingly diverse. Race, 1.8 in 2017, now 8% in 2021. This is a group of people, if we're talking about proportionate representation, who, up until when the next census comes out, are 4% of the population. Profile of key protected characteristics. Race. Going up from 3 to 4% in the years that have followed. And here we have Jeff Palmer, though. Increasing diversity within the honours work. This is Jeff Palmer again. You know, I'm not going to read out all his shit, but Jeff Palmer gets a mention. This is another thing that I've never heard of before, but the honours independent reviewer to the Scottish Government and is assisting with the honours work. And then it says the protocol and honours team continue to interact with the honours champions appointed within each Scottish Government directorate to discuss their role in promoting honours internally and externally and to increase diversity of nominees. It's always about increasing diversity. It's always about making things less white. But they never actually specify any justifiable reason for why that is the case, apart from stating proportionate representation. Which leads me to a point I brought up near the very beginning of the stream. As the country becomes less and less BAME, if things are to be proportionally represented, would that not then mean that every institution and whatnot, or even in this instance, the honours champion network and whatnot, have to become increasingly more brown? Play that out to a logical conclusion when the country is 4% white. Does that mean that every institution, and by extension it would be anyway, it would go without saying, but would that not mean then that it would have to be, simply to keep up with consistency, it would have to be reflective of the population, meaning as the country becomes more brown, every institution has to become more brown to reflect that respectively?
Then again, which we already know, people are being marginalised, discriminated against, racist narratives are being driven to basically push people out the workplace into poverty so that we've got a saviour story. If it wasn't all for all this immigration, we would be fucked. But again, the true nature, the devil in the detail, is that you can't achieve, and I'm sorry for being very repetitive, but you can't achieve a quality of outcome for all, because when you get equality for one, you're definitely stamping on somebody else. And I want people to think about this, right? See, when our stream finishes in it, I want you to think about this, right? And I don't go on very big tangents about my faith. I really don't, right? But I'm going to ask you one thing tonight. Take the race element out of the question just now, right? Because that is very, very, very central to this, right? But you're already aware of that. Why is it only Christian nations are getting this from the absolute top? Why are they emptying the absolute dregs of the third world into us on mass levels? And I don't want you to think, you can think what you want. What I'm not trying to get at, sorry, was what I should say, is they're not coming here to take the kids' places off you. They're not coming here to take your jobs off you. There is an absolute bigger picture and bigger meaning to this. And it's not for me to kind of expand. I just want you to think about that and go and do a little bit of reading or a wee bit of writing or a wee bit of documentaries, a wee bit of YouTube. Get something, write it down, come back to it. Because this is way bigger than what you could possibly entail. Johnny V is a guy that I've seen on your streams before. He's come into your chat, he's on various streams that I see. He's always nail on the head type of guy. But for the folks that don't get it yet, right? And I don't want to drop any J-bombs on your stream, mate. But if, and I'm just going to offer a branch here, if the roles were reversed, right? Like two siblings and the siblings are trying to compete and outdo each other, but there's a bitterness there where you're trying to cause conflict and deceit and malice. You would be constantly at the neck of that individual. And I'm trying to be careful with my language again, because for the folks that may know, you will know what I'm getting at with this. But for the folks that don't, go and read your Bible, go and look at the documentaries that are being suggested online. There is enough stones in the path to get you to why this is only happening to European people and nobody else. And when you get that, I swear to God, you will fully wake up like all cylinders firing, and you will see everything in a different perspective that you have not seen before. Things have been very subtly out there, but kept from you, because if you knew the truth about your origin, about your identity, whether you're ethnically Scot, ethnically English, ethnically German, ethnically Italian, this whole continent would change completely overnight. Agenda 2030, critical race theory, all this multiculturalism bullshit would not fucking be entertained. Period. This is the absolute power and the importance, fundamentally, the importance of the duty that you need to do when you come to that conclusion.
Hey, man. I'll let. I was going to put Johnny V's comment up there, but I thought maybe, I don't want to influence the viewer, make them make their own mind up here. But the last thing I will put on the screen tonight is the education section, purely on the basis, of time, because I have had a message from my missus, and she is sort of in close proximity, about 25 minutes away. So that kind of ties in nicely with the hitting the 2-hour mark to a certain extent. John Davison, I think, should be on stream after me at some point at 9 o'clock. So that's good to see he's back on the mend. But let me share the screen again on the education section. It's impossible to go through. I mean, realistically, in order for me to go through this document in full, I'd have to sort of relive my first ever stream, which you were part of. You remember that? It's like 5 hours long.
That was a long stream.
Oh, fuck. My voice was so croaky at the end, too. But the start, though, because I didn't know how to work StreamYard, I couldn't let you in. And then I went, you were sat at the back for ages, and all I had to do was add you to the broadcast. I didn't know how to do it. So then I went on ahead. Yeah, so I went on ahead. I think you got in at one point, then you left or something. I don't know. And I couldn't get you back. Then you went away out, and then you came back like 4 hours later, and I was still streaming. And you came in, and then that's when the infamous dominatrix segment came from. But education. My voice in that stream was so bad towards the end. Like if you watch that stream, it's still on my channel, my first ever stream. And my voice sounds like how I sound now, but by the end I was like, oh my god, like. But education and lifelong learning. Everyone has the opportunity to learn in an inclusive environment without disadvantage in relation to racial inequality or racism. The ambition is to make Scotland the best place to grow up and to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to learn in an inclusive environment which is actively anti-racist. Our mission is to shape the education and skills opportunities for all Scottish citizens. Even this, by the way, see when you hear that, does that not bug you a bit when you see a quote like that, as minor as it might very well be to some people? Scottish citizens?
Well, again, you see, I don't let it anger me. It's just sheer disgust, and I think if I'm being honest with you, I get the same kind of disgust when I hear global citizenship, because it's to like it further details what actually is pure in the world. And I know we might have went on a wee bit a high note here, but I think it's very healthy for Angola to be full of Angolians, healthy Angolians, Egyptians, Kurdish, wherever in the world they are, that they have their own sovereign people. That I think that's a very helpful thing. To try and dilute that down and pass it off as little Roger the Eskimo up in the Arctic Circle can be Kurdish as anyone else. No, he can't. Let's stop fucking pretending. Let's just put that filth in the pan. And we're doing here at Scotland, which is an absolute small country. We have a very small population compared to many, many countries in the world. This doesn't have for me, this is more worrisome like other small countries, because it isn't like London, where this takes, and I don't mean this any badness to London, because London's a great city and it should be for the people of London. But London, because of the sheer vastness of it, it takes decades and decades to finally tip the scales. Scotland can be done in 20 to 25 years, flat out, like that, easy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a worrisome thing there.
No, I don't disagree at all. And by the way, somebody said, no, wrong one. I don't know if it was in reference to you. What? I don't know. Fuck knows. But yeah, Scottish diaspora is bigger than the population of Scotland itself. They estimate there's about 40 million people out there who can classify themselves as Scottish diaspora. But as I've posted a video on my channel as of in recent weeks, they want to redefine what diaspora means now. And my point to that is they literally do. Angus Robertson, just in case you didn't know this, Scots, he's come out with the Scottish Government's latest escapade, and that's to redefine what diaspora entails. And that is to effectively mean that people from anywhere in the world who identify as Scottish, BAMEs included and whatnot. My point with that is, though, the reason they're doing that is because prior to this, to acknowledge that there's a diaspora is to acknowledge that there's a people. And that's exactly what they want to redefine the fucking term.
This is going to be petty, but these are two examples that you could flip the table at, and we'll get them out very quickly. The first one was, I remember the absolute uproar by the Scottish National Party when David Cameron was the Prime Minister, and they redefined people what the word poverty actually meant, right? Like, as if that's not kicking the balls to poor people. But secondly, right, you picture some party going like that. Do you know what? If you vote us into power, we'll get us back into Europe. They vote the people into power. They then come out and say, well, technically, we're going to just redefine ourselves as European since we're already based in a European continent. So technically, we're already there. They can't do that. The point being, right, and I know that's a very shady but yet simplistic point to use. That is my point. They can't redefine what the Scottish people are, whether they're here or whether they're living abroad, because at the end of the day, right, the very founding document for Scotland, for Scotland's sovereignty, for Scotland's people, is enacted and laid out in a Declaration of Arbroath. It is very simple. To expand or to suggest otherwise is null and void, or you're actually diluting the document, which means that the document, technically speaking, is a legal setting, is basically washed away. Now, they can't have their cake and eat it, so it's what one is it? And we all know, with the hardcore people that's within the independence movement, if they were to suggest that the Declaration of Arbroath is null and void, they would lose huge support overnight.
Mm-hmm. No, you're not wrong, and that's why I find it very irritating when they bring up sovereignty and the sovereignty of the Scottish people and whatnot, because at the end of the day, as with many things that these people are trying to parrot and perpetuate across society, they're predicated on falsehoods. It's sort of like a bending and contorting of what is classed as reality. We know the truth. Most people know the truth. They don't need to be explained to them. They're just trying to bury the truth in many respects. The same with the transgender shit is just one example. You can see what's in front of you. You know who is who, but yet they want to tell you different. The same is applicable to Scottish people or any other ethnic group or, country, whatever you will, across the pond. You know who is who. They're just trying to contort and bend reality. And one of their many methods to do so is to redefine their words. But, and yeah, to your point here, look at all the migrants that are coming because the high courts say we can't close borders. But again, it's just all contrived nonsense. The borders could be shut tomorrow. There's always somebody to blame, whether it's the high courts, whether it's the Supreme Court, whether it's the House of Lords, whether it's the NGOs, whether it's the United Nations, whether it's international law. It doesn't fucking matter. The borders could be shut tomorrow, and they won't do it. And no, we're not sovereign. No, we're absolutely not sovereign. And it should have held in a democracy. Glad we're on the same page. But anyway, just to get through this last little section, I'm not going to read through all of the stuff at the top here, but this bit here, they want to ensure they learn children, just so I'm not bullshitting people, educating our children, ensuring they learn tolerance, respect, equality, and good citizenship, as well as healthy relationships. All staff are expected to be proactive in promoting positive relationships and behavior in the classroom, playground, and the wider school community, right? While progress in articulating and embedding anti-racism has been made across the education system, including in curriculum developing and building racial literacy, which is critical race theory, right? And for anybody that's new to my channel or watches this at a later date that's never seen a video of mine before, just go on my playlists. I've got one dedicated to building racial literacy. It's critical race theory. At all levels within the workforce, other areas such as ensuring effective career guidance and employability support for individuals from racialized minorities requires renewed focus and commitment going forward, right? So, anti-racism and education program. And as I said, we'll conclude with this. The Scottish Government has acknowledged that race inequality in schools remains evident and the need to tackle it imperative. In response, the Anti-Racism and Education Programme was established to make fundamental changes to our education system to ensure that it's fundamentally anti-racist. This followed a 3-month programme of stakeholder roundtables between John Swinney and a range of race, equality and education stakeholders, as well as children and young people from minority or racialized minorities. Envisaged the actions will result in race literate as opposed to race evasive educational staff, aka educational staff, teachers and whatnot, who are versed or at least see the world to a certain extent via a critical race theorist lens. Increased numbers of racialized minority educators in schools because that will stop racism. See, again, what's this got to do with anything, right? Racism apparently exists in schools. I know what we can do to stop the racism. I know what we can do to get Danny and Thomas to stop calling Mahungi bad words and derogatory terms. We will force in brown teachers into the school because that will stop Danny and Thomas being mean to Bahungi. In schools, they want a decolonized curriculum with race cognizant resources and teachers and staff who are better equipped to address and prevent racism to Bahungi in Scotland schools, right? And then they also say here that they've got, and this is the critical race theorist here, where it says a successful professional development opportunity entitled the Building Racial Literacy Program has been developed as part of this group's work program. To date, 3 cohorts of educators and education system leaders have completed this professional learning, which has supported them to be actively anti-racist and to take forward their learning from within their professional and personal environments. Evaluations from the most recent 3rd cohort indicate that educators and education system leaders completing the program felt inspired and motivated by their professional learning, believing the program helped them to improve their practice, right? Now, of course, for anybody that's not aware of this program, the Building Racial Literacy Program, the participants to influence changes to the culture of their establishments with emerging evidence of the program's positive wider impact on participants, colleagues, and learners. The long-term goal of this program, of course, which the Scottish Government funded, is to have this in every single school up and down Scotland, from nursery, early years, which is nursery, all the way to higher education. They've also got a section dedicated to diversity in the teaching workforce, which is again more shit, where more brown teachers will apparently save the day. And just to conclude, curriculum reform. This work aims to articulate, promote, and embed anti-racism through all areas of the curriculum. The work stream has created new principles for an anti-racist curriculum as a way to capture the rights and expectations of children, young people, leaders, and educators. Education Scotland have published guidance for educators and continue to develop resources and examples of practice to support and inspire a race or an anti-racist education. Now we're on page 66. Well, what a funny page to stop on, but I am obviously cautious of time. But I'll obviously let you conclude with anything you wish to say in that, especially, well, you might not necessarily have seen a lot of the stuff I've covered with the building racial literacy stuff, but it's a major problem.
Oh, without any shadow of doubt, and it shouldn't be kind of a palmed off. It should be definitely emphasised on all fronts how dangerous and insidious this actually really is. The curriculum, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely fucked in Scotland. But before I go, if you don't mind me saying, mate, for the folks who may or may not already know, for the rest of the week, we have John Davidson tonight. If you haven't, go and find John Davidson. Like, subscribe, follow the channel for future streams. This Saturday evening, follow Sensum Communal. He will be there with his number 2, Toffee. Like, subscribe, and follow. And the next time we will be back is the 9th of July. And we'll be doing a little line out of Alan's book here. We'll be going all shot Starship Troopers. We'll be playing our part. And if you want to know more, then you can tune in, be there, and be square. Until then, good night, God bless, and be kind to one another.
Aye, and I will just say as well on a side note that obviously we didn't get through the entirety of this PDF. I'm going to post in the chat just now, right? But this is a sort of grotesque, just absolutely malevolent PDF, government-funded PDFs that seem to sneak through. Oh my God, look at that. I tried to post that in the chat and it's like 3 different links. Holy fuck. Okay, well, that was a fail. But yeah, this is the sort of stuff that sneaks through the back door, and people are none the wiser. We concluded tonight, and it wasn't purposely, of the Building Racial Literacy program. And this is something that is, one of the points that we continuously made throughout the stream tonight, quite often, was the fact that a lot of their nonsense is predicated on stuff that could be quite easily debunked if given the opportunity to do so. But they live in a vacuum where they can perpetuate nonsense, and it is reaffirmed by every policy that's implemented. It's reaffirmed by every activist. It's reaffirmed by every government official and whatnot. And this is the end product. The Building Racial Literacy program, right? And this is just one example of many things we went through in such a short space of time, because that document is littered with new and upcoming proposals and policies from the government that none of us are any the wiser of, but it's all predicated on racism, etc. But this Building Racial Literacy program is critical race theory, right? Predicated on attacking whiteness, right? The ideology is not just anti-white male, it's anti-white boy. So for anybody in the chat tonight who's got a son, just think about that, right? I could quite easily end this stream on an exceptionally low point and start showing you some of the things that these people speak about on their old websites. I'm not going to. I'm going to leave you something to think about. If you've got a son, even if you've got a daughter, but more specifically, if you've got a son, that's your son they're talking about, right? And this isn't up to me or somebody on Twitter or somebody with a much larger following to just talk about this and everything will be rosy. It's incumbent on each and every single person who's listening right now. It's incumbent on every single person that watches at a later date to start to speak about these issues. Show your friends, show your family. More importantly, though, if you've got a son, show yourself. And on that note, adios.